Good morning. Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to this Onward event hosted by BAE Systems. My name is Ian Muldowney. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for BAE Systems in the air sector. I'm pleased to host in today's event and discussion at our Academy of Skills and Knowledge, or ASK, here at Samlesbury, which is the heart of skills, education and lifelong learning for our air sector business. I'm very pleased to welcome Secretary of State for Education, Gillian Keegan, who will see firsthand the next generation of talent through the ASK. And in a few moments, I'll invite the Minister to take the stage, and then our Chief Executive, Dr. Charles Woodburn, to say a few words before we hand over to Seb of Onward to facilitate our panel discussion regarding the UK becoming a science superpower. Before we do that, just a few words about me and where we are today. Many of you will be aware that BAE Systems has always had a large presence in the Northwest. Here in Lancashire, BAE Systems is the hub for complex systems integration, advanced engineering, manufacturing and support of many former, current and future world-leading combat aircraft programmes. We're proud to be a custodian and provider of the UK's sovereign air capability, which reflects both the responsibility to have a sustainable business for the future and continue to support the Royal Air Force, our international customers and what they do today and to ensure our security and defence. Not too far from here is our colleagues in our submarines business, where they design, build and support the next generation of nuclear-powered submarines that protect the UK day in and day out. As we work together with our military customers, our supply chain, our partners, we embrace technology to deliver advanced software and digital capabilities the armed forces need. We are recruiting and nurturing more and more highly skilled people, young people, mid-career people, through our world-class education and training programs. The facility you're standing today represents £20 million of investment that we made in 2016 and reflects how seriously we take that. We continue to invest year in, year out. The apprentices working here and our system academies in Barrow, up in Scotland, have exciting futures ahead of them, developing complex digital manufacturing technical skills that need to across many sectors in the UK, and especially those in the science and technology sector. As someone who's personally started that journey circa 27 years ago, I had the opportunity of being an apprentice and going through the business, working in many complex programs at many of our global locations, a diverse set of roles, and also what makes me feel really proud is that now someone who I see myself as a custodian, helping others navigate that generation of next generation of skills and talent, not just in the air sector, but across the defence enterprise. With that, I'd like to invite a big warm welcome to Secretary of State of Education, Gillian Keegan, to the stage.
Thank you, Ian. I'm really delighted to be able to be here today and to talk about making the UK a science superpower and what we need to do to achieve that. And I'm particularly happy to be addressing an event run by BAE and Onward, two organisations who are well ahead of their time. Onward for their science superpower research, their identification of the Red Wall in 2019, and their pioneering work on skills. Plus, they picked a certain new MP from the Northwest to be on their advisory board way before I was any kind of minister for anything. And if Onward is the organisation that spots the thorny political issues we need to solve, well, BAE are one of the exemplars of how we don't just talk about skills and science, but we deliver them. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and I can't think of a better place. Now, when preparing for this speech, I was thinking, why does science matter? Everyone will have their own individual answer, but I think there will be some common themes. It's about understanding the world, how it works, and creating new and better ways of living in that world to improve our lives. This is deeply important as our lives are changing all the time. We seem to be in an age of perpetual technological revolution. But I'm an optimist, and I am certain that with change comes opportunity. Having worked in multinational tech-focused business for years, I'm passionate about the UK being at the forefront of science and tech and using that to drive economic progress and jobs. I want to be able to collaborate with the brightest and the best here in the UK to deliver change and growth. So that is why, as a nation, we need to be a driving force of tech change. And the evidence suggests that we are holding our own. The UK tech sector ended last year as Europe's third leading ecosystem, retaining its global third place, position as the main challenger to the US and China. During 2022, fast-growing UK tech companies continued to raise investment at near record levels at £24 billion, which was more than France and Germany combined. And the UK tech industry reached a valuation of $1 trillion last year, making it only the third country ever to hit this valuation after US and China. So we're in a good position, envied by many, but we can't obviously take that for granted. Because if you're standing still in such a rapidly moving world, then you are falling behind. We cannot afford to rest on our laurels because just as quickly as technology changes, our prime place at the world's tech top table can disappear. So what are we doing to make sure we stay there? Back in March 23, the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology published the UK Science and Tech Framework. This sets out 10 key actions to cement the UK's status as a science and technology superpower by 2030. We all play our part, and within this framework, the Department for Education is responsible for cross-government action on talent and skills. And for me, this task is straightforward. We need to equip people with the right education and skills to support our ambitions. Easy to say, many people have said it, difficult to do. Education needs to be not just about what you learn, but how you apply it in the real world. But of course, just describing the problem isn't going to solve it. Just delivering a speech like I'm doing now isn't going to solve it. If that's all that was needed to solve the big issues, then it would be easy for anyone to do. I don't need to tell you the challenge is much greater than that. STEM skills are already in demand by employers across the country, indeed across the world, and demand is growing. It's a very real barrier to growth, and that every company you know will be facing. Over the coming decade, the UK will need more STEM skills at all levels, from advanced specialisation in our world-class universities to higher technical skills. We'll need digital and data skills, such as accessing and manipulating data and information. We'll need technical skills, such as repair and use of technical equipment and processes. And we'll need specialist skills, such as in medicine and dentistry. In construction and manufacturing alone, 36% of all vacancies in 2019 were due to skills shortages. And the digital skills gap costs the UK economy £63 billion per year in lost potential GDP. So that challenge to tackle these skills gaps and ensure education, training and skills is keeping pace with demands, and it shouldn't be underestimated. We know we need to secure a sufficient pipeline of young people studying science subjects and performing well in them. We know we need to make a success of our technical education reforms, steering people towards the skills that employers need. We know we need to do more, but thankfully standing still is still not a nature of this government. That mission starts in schools with high quality science lessons to drive performance at all levels. We're making sure that more children are studying STEM subjects, that more children are achieving STEM qualifications, and that more of them will go on to study STEM subjects later in life. That's why we've invested substantial spending on our programmes, such as Stimulating Physics programme and the Science Learning Partnerships. That's why we're improving teacher recruitment in key STEM subjects, for example, through tax-free bursaries and scholarships. We're doing a lot more in schools, too much to cover here, but I can tell you that under this government it is working. A-level maths has been the most popular A-level since 2014. STEM A-level entries have increased, and entries from girls have seen a 35% increase since 2010. Computer science has been one of the fastest growing GCSE subjects since its introduction in 2013. It's a good base to start from, but while STEM might start at school, we're putting in the work that doesn't stop at 16, so that the students of today can become the scientists and engineers of tomorrow. Alongside a goal to study maths to 18, we're also revolutionising our post-16 skills offer, with a real focus on technical skills that our industry needs. When I first started in the department, I was clear. Technical education is only being done right if it's employer-focused, high quality and fit for the future. I make no apology for my love of apprenticeships and the value that they bring to individuals, employers and the nation. I will definitely make no apology for thinking that we need to get them right, and that because if we do get them right and the quality is right, they can transform lives. That's what an apprenticeship did for me many years ago in Liverpool at the age of 16, and it's what it's doing for millions of others across the country every day. That's why we're supporting more people to complete an apprenticeship. In 2021-22, over 28% of the starts were STEM apprenticeships. Now in the second quarter, it's 33%. This is starting to change. The change is happening. We're shifting the dial and making an apprenticeship the path to a great career in STEM. I'd also like to take a moment to pay tribute to BAE Systems, who are sponsoring this event and have been leading with apprenticeships. Well, I've got here over 20 years, but clearly many more years than that, Ian, if you studied yours 27 years ago. So let's say many decades. I often say that if everyone embraced apprenticeships like BAE Systems do, then my job would be easy. You've been responsible for the direct delivery of training almost 2,000 apprentices and currently employ 2,686 apprentices in England across 60 different apprenticeship standards from level 2 to 7. And that's just since the reforms. Obviously, you've trained many more over the decades. You're a real standard bearer and true believers in apprenticeships, and it's great to see that, so thank you. Apprenticeships are not the only game in town. Well, they are not the only game in town. We've also introduced T-levels as a high-quality level 3 technical qualification, so a credible alternative to A-levels to give young people the skills that they need to be a valuable asset in the workplace. BAE are leaders in T-levels too, offering industry placements up to 30, I believe, from September, so thank you for that. And if an apprenticeship or a T-level isn't for you, don't worry, we have other options. we've introduced a suite of high technical qualifications, which you're taught in some of the most exciting places in the UK, the new Institutes of Technology. We've invested up to £300 million in them. And let me tell you, if you get to visit one, you walk around one, you will feel like you are experiencing the future. There is so much opportunity, so much potential for a young person wanting to get into STEM all across our country, or a young scientist wanting to make us a science superpower. But as the world changes, it's not just about our future workforce, it's about reskilling so that we can all benefit, so that we can all excel in STEM. And here's a great example of the power of skills boot camps, which we've also introduced for adults. AIS Survivix are delivering wind turbine technician skills boot camps that both support new entrants into offshore wind and enable existing workers to progress into new technologies. Employers, including Corel and GE, are working closely with AIS Survivix on the design and the delivery of the training and are committed to recruiting employees from the boot camps. And of course, if you fancy a more traditional academic route, we have our world-class higher education university system, which has produced generations of scientists. This year, over 50% of the budget will be directed towards the provision of high-cost subjects such as healthcare, science, engineering and technologies in our universities. So that's what we're doing. How can employers, industry and businesses help in this mission? Let's consider a question first. If I asked every employer in this room, what are the issues facing your business today? I know skills will be right at the top of the list. If I ask it in 5 years' time, I know skills will be right at the top of the list. If I ask it in 10 years' time, I know skills will be right at the top of the list. Employers and industry know what skills they need, and we have worked with over 5,000 of you to make sure our training will meet those needs. And no ifs and no buts, we will always stay close to try and put education and business as close as it possibly can be. Employers have worked with us to design apprenticeship standards. They're leading on the establishment of institutes of technologies. They're instrumental in the design of T-levels and, of course, providing the all-important industry placement for students. And they're working with training providers to design and deliver skills boot camps all across the country and taking recruits from those into jobs. And they're working with us to ensure that local skills plans meet local employers' needs and working to improve also careers guidance in schools. I know BAE, they have a flagship offer, the Schools Roadshow programme for a 9 to 12-year-old, which engages with more than 500 schools and more than 100,000 young people who I'm sure are being inspired every year. They also offer work experience for 14 to 16-year-olds, providing over 450 placements. So employers like BAE are at the heart of the skills system. And otherwise, what is the point of the skills system? There's no point spending all those years, 12, 15, 18 years in a classroom seat if when you get out, it's not what the employers need or not what they want. But we need more employers like BAE Systems and others like them if we're to become truly world leading in this space. It's really clear to me that the UK can become a science superpower, but only if we continue to ensure young people and existing employees have the right education, training and skills to innovate. And every employer is helping to shape provision by working with us and with education providers. I would urge all employers, take on an apprentice, use boot camps, offer a T-level industry placement, because you never know. That nervous person turning up at reception at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, we've all been there, eager to learn, might just be the very person who creates a new product, solves a technical challenge, or makes the prototype that changes your business forever. So let's make sure every young person gets that chance, that every adult who missed out in earlier life gets that chance, and following their path or dream will contribute to our global competitiveness, ensuring we are a science superpower. Maybe involving in the latest vaccine, which saves millions of lives, which the vaccines that we developed during COVID have done. It's been saved more lives around the world than any other vaccine. Or maybe making giant leaps with artificial intelligence. We should make that happen. We can make that happen, and we must make that happen. Thank you very much.
So, Secretary of State, thank you for the very kind words. And good morning, everyone. As Ian said, we're honoured to host in our Air Sector Academy for Skills and Knowledge, otherwise known as the ASK, it's great to hear your passion and vision for ensuring the UK is a leader in STEM subjects and digital skills too. It's a passion that we share here at BAE Systems. We've been focused on STEM for many years, and it's vitally important to delivering national security. The work we do here in Samlesbury and at our other sites across the UK relies on us having a pipeline of highly skilled employees to design, deliver, maintain and protect complex and sensitive programs and keep Britain at the forefront of technological innovation. That's why we take our responsibility to retain and develop these sovereign skills extremely seriously. Last year, we spent £180 million on skills, training and education, and I was really pleased to see our long-standing schools outreach programme engage its 1 millionth pupil. This year, we're recruiting thousands of people across the UK and increasing our apprentice and graduate intake by more than 40%. And it was great to hear yesterday that we were again named as one of the UK's top apprentice employers. As we're all seeing in the news daily, the world is unfortunately becoming a more dangerous place. The threats that governments are facing on the ground, in the air, at sea, in space and in the cyber domain are increasing in complexity and frequency. The capabilities we're developing need to be smarter, delivered more quickly, and able to adapt and respond to an ever-changing environment and multiple adversaries. So we're putting a greater focus on digital skills across our entire workforce. Just down the road in Wharton, we're trialling automation in manufacturing, and robotics and 3D printing is now used throughout our Typhoon production line, tools and techniques we teach right here in the ASK. We're investing in space, acquiring and partnering with companies that design, build and launch satellites, and plan to have our own Azalea constellation ready for launch next year. We're pushing the boundaries of synthetic training, using the latest gaming technologies and virtual reality software to give soldiers, sailors and aviators the most realistic experience from the safety of a simulator. And we're working behind the scenes to ensure that all of this digital-driven capability is protected from sophisticated cyber attacks. Ensuring the UK retains its strategic and military advantage relies on our people having the right kinds of skills. And I'm really excited that later this year, we'll be launching a global digital academy to help provide a pipeline of talent in critical areas such as cyber, software, and data science. All of our employees across our operations are extremely proud of what they do. Their passion for our purpose is visible at our sites and in the communities where we're based. Like me, they're particularly proud of the support we're providing to Ukraine. Global defence spending is increasing, and last year we had a record order intake as governments look to invest in their own capabilities in response to the heightened threat environment. Our strong financial performance means we're able to continue to invest in high-skilled jobs, world-leading advanced technologies, and suppliers and communities across the UK. Research we're publishing today shows that last year, our UK-based businesses supported 132,000 jobs across the UK between our employees and our supply chain, and we contributed more than £11 billion to the UK GDP. That's about 0.4% of the entire UK economy. In 2022, we carried out £1.4 billion worth of research and development on behalf of the UK government as we worked with our partners, suppliers and academia on the latest innovations and technology. And we gave £4.5 million to charities and organisations that support the causes our employees care about most. This can only happen if we continue to deliver on our commitments to our customers, and that relies on us having the right people at the heart of our business. So we're pleased to be working with you, Secretary of State, and with other organisations we'll hear from today to ensure that the UK continues to be at the forefront of the digital skills revolution. I'm looking forward to talking more about these priorities in the panel discussion in a moment. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hello everyone. Thank you for amusing yourselves in that brief interlude there. I'm Sebastian Payne, I'm Director of Onward, and we're thrilled to be here for this event today, and it was great to hear from Gillian and for Charles. We now begin the panel discussion, the interactive part of this. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce our two other guests here who we'll hear from briefly, and then we'll take questions from the floor and those of us who are joining us online. So we have Chelsea Slater, who is co-founder director of Innovate Her, which is preparing teenage girls for careers in the tech industry, and crucially gets the tech industry ready for girls as well, and particularly focused on secondary schools of 13 to 17-year-olds. And then on my far left we have Professor Danielle George from the University of Manchester, Professor of Radio Frequency Engineering, which is, as I'm sure you all know, it's a very, very crucial part of trying to get to our science superpower ambitions. So to begin, Chelsea, would you like to begin on this question of upskilling? I'd love to hear from your experiences working in secondary schools about what you've heard from Gillian and from Charles about what more we need to be doing and what you're doing at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for having me. Gillian painted a wonderful picture there of, you know, what's happening in the UK in terms of education and skills, but I'm going to kind of challenge that a little bit, because what I see, we work at Innovate Here with over 250 schools. We've worked with 40,000 students this year, and actually there's just so much more that we need to do. So teachers are telling us that they're not getting enough training in technical skills. They haven't got enough time to go on training that exists. There's so much pressure on them. Students are telling us, oh, I don't see the point in taking tech subjects. We don't, I'd rather take Spanish or other subjects. That's an exact quote of one of the girls that I was speaking to recently. And I think the challenge is, there's a stereotypical person that we think of when we think of technology, which is causing a bit of a barrier for others, especially young people and young women and minority groups. But also, I think technology is so broad, engineering is so broad, so trying to get them to think about actually how they can go and have a career in it, what that looks like, is something that Innovate Here is really trying to tackle by bringing amazing organisations like BAE in to kind of broaden what that looks like, tell them stories, bring them to facilities like this. We showcase diverse role models to try and help them bring it to life. But yeah, there's just so much more to be done. And technology, as we know, and with AI now, is moving so fast. I don't know how we're going to keep up with it. I think the training needs to be consistent. There needs to be more investment in organisations like mine and others. But yeah, we've got a long way to go.
Absolutely, and I think, again, AI is something that I think everyone's spending a huge amount of time, and I'm sure Secretary of State, you're doing that as well, and we've got a Prime Minister who's very engaged with the AI debate, and it's good to see that, but trying to tackle it with the normal white horse structures is probably going to be a bit too slow and will be overtaken by events very quickly. But before we get into the discussion, Danielle, I'd like to get your perspective, moving further on the education to your experience in university. What are your reflections in terms of the challenges and the opportunities on skills?
Yeah, there's definitely challenges and opportunities for sure. At the university, I'm the Associate Vice President for Flexible Learning. So I have a sort of a circa £22 million portfolio just to look at making sure that our education is accessible, inclusive and international. And for somewhere like Manchester, which is a research intensive university, it's very traditional. It has definitely the challenges and the opportunities to this, just to make sure that we are increasing pathways into an education at university level. So not just the stuff that we're already really good at, the sort of bachelor's, the master's, those sort of things, the 3-year, 4-year. What about if you can't afford that time, or financially you can't afford it? why should you not be allowed to have a Manchester education still, because you know we're one of the world's greatest universities, so we should be able to open our doors more. So that's what we're doing with this flexible learning programme, and it's really, really important that we do work with business, with industry and with government to do that, just to make sure that we are actually addressing the needs rather than what we think they are, or what government think they are, or what businesses think they are. If we all come together and do it, we'll be a bit better. Just on, Chelsea, on your point as well, I mean, I think it's part of all of our roles, every single one of us in this room, to inspire that next generation as well. And some of the apprentices, if you haven't spoken to them already, please go and do it after this, because they're absolutely inspiring. We have to inspire the next generation. We have to show people how creative STEM can be as well. It isn't boring. It isn't particularly harder than anything else. You know, you have to have that passion, and you should share that passion. One thing really sticks in my mind from years ago. I was out sort of chatting in a secondary school about the engineering that I do, and why it's fun and creative, and why we need that next generation coming in and, you know, solving these global challenges that we have. And she said, yeah, I really think, you know, you do need to do that, and lots more people need to do that. I was like, really, why do you think we need to do that? And she said, well, I'm you in the future. So if you help me now, in the future I'll be better than you. And you're like, that is brilliant. You know, so I think there's a part that we all have to remember, that this pipeline starts very, very young, you know, in the sort of primary school. It should go all the way through, and universities have a massive role to play in that.
I just want to pick up on this point, Charles, about the stereotype that that Chelsea was talking about. That obviously this is something that I know that UBA have tried to tackle as well, but it is a general national thing, I think, that we struggle with, that you're either a scientist or you're an arts person. And if you go think back to the sort of 18th, 19th century, the idea of the two cultures is something that very much exists in this country. You don't see that in America, you don't see that in other European countries. That's very important to how we deal with the skills things. It can't be siloed, that you're just one or the other. It's got to be a much more meshed thing together. What's your view on how we can try and sort of tackle that?
Well, I think we've mentioned already some of the apprentices here. I mean, they tend to be our best role models. I mean, using people who have made a choice, still quite early in their careers, going back into schools and explaining the great opportunities that they've had, and breaking down some of those misconceptions that we spoke about already as to, you know, what a career in STEM actually entails, and the kind of work that involves, and the high-tech side of it. I mean, I think there are elements, even we see it in our business, where the external view is often sort of old-fashioned, you know, rivets and panel bashing and what have you, which, by the way, are important parts of our business, but there's a huge vein of high technology that runs through it. And I think I mean, my personal view is that the young people who've come into the apprentice programs, they tend to be the most effective at telling that story, partly because they're most recently out of the educational system, and going back in, they're still very much seen as sort of credible. It's much easier for them than me going in as a middle-aged white guy saying that there's some good opportunities for you. It's much better that we get our young people, and we've had real success. I know I see nodding around the room, but certainly from our early careers teams in this room, you know, we know the power of that, getting back into schools and making the positive case.
And Gillian, obviously, you're an example of this, as I think when you became the Education Secretary. I think you did a BBC interview with Nick Robinson where you talked about probably the only person in the Cabinet, I'm certain at the moment, who came through apprenticeship route, but probably in quite some time as well. Again, where do you see us on the kind of cultural debate? Because this is very important about getting the right skills, because I think, again, too often we've been a bit too denigrating in our kind of national conversation about apprenticeships, and it's proven quite a hard one to change.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I am the only degree apprentice in the House of Commons, and I want to get lots more in them. In fact, I want to get loads more degree apprentices everywhere. I think something Danielle said there as well, which is people need to understand at school that it's not harder. They think it's a harder subject or a harder path. And actually, the vast majority of these skills are actually application of technology. You need millions of people to be able to apply it really well. You don't actually need everyone to have created it. But in terms of the science versus arts, there isn't actually an art now without science. So I was at Chichester Festival Theatre recently, meeting the first production director apprentice. I was delighted to put that in place. And she was showing me what she was doing as they were preparing for the theatre, she'd use 3D modelling to model the whole stage set, to send it to the actors 6 months before they went there, so that they could practice in real life, but virtual life, in their places, so that when they all came together to put this show on, they knew what they were doing. I said to her, how did you know to do that? Because I looked at the apprenticeship standard, it wasn't in there. She said, well, I knew how to do it, and I thought that's a great use of it, so it's now in there. You know, so there's lots and lots of those examples. I was in another college the other day, and I was meeting some kids I'd met before, actually, at Liverpool City College, and they were doing mocap. If you want to be down with the kids, that's the new thing, mocap, motion capture technology. And it's unbelievably brilliant technology. It's really easy to use and apply. They'd taken it from gaming, and they were using it and they'd created induction for people going to hospital, so that they could watch a video, which it take them no time to do this mocap, because you can almost animate immediately and create environments immediately for training in some of your, you know, more sort of difficult to access workspaces, or in this case it was for people who were going into hospital to know what they needed to do, where they needed to go, how they needed to prepare, where they would check in, saving lots of time, being more productive. They'd done that because the gaming young students had been talking to others, and then they'd applied it, all student-led. This technology is actually off the scale if you look at what it's doing now and what it enables, and it's not harder. I think, Danielle, that's something we really need to get over. So there isn't an arts without science, and there isn't a science without arts, and it's not harder.
Great.
Now, I just want to bounce this back to how this plays into universities, of course, because there's some people who argue that there has to be a deprioritisation of higher education to focus on further education apprenticeships. I think Onward would argue that it doesn't have to be either or, that having both is kind of important there. But what is the role of higher education in trying to improve this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think higher education must be part of this conversation. It must be part of the pipeline. It's not the answer, definitely not. But I think what the answer is the co-design between business, universities, government, and making sure that, like I said earlier, making sure that sometimes we think we know what industry wants. Sometimes industry sort of say, well, this is what they want, but then, you know, there's 100 different industries that our graduates go to, so how do we sort of work with that? And then, you know, there are some great initiatives that come out, like the lifelong loan entitlement. Yeah. That is a great initiative, and universities need to look at that. So this is sort of changing the student loan system so that if you want to hop on and hop off your educational experience throughout your years, you can. You don't have to just do it at 18, which is brilliant. The downside is I don't think we've co-created it enough, because there's a minimum amount of credit that needs to go into it, and I don't think that serves what industry need now. It's too much. We need the sort of more bite-sized things as well. So I think we need to co-create things a lot more. But universities, I would say, must be part of that pipeline and must change as well. You know, that this is a change for somewhere like the University of Manchester. But it's a really good opportunity for us to do so.
And Chelsea, that change obviously does have to be for even earlier at school as well, that when people are looking at this, they're able to see the kind of the barriers being broken down that Gillian and Charles have talked about.
Yeah, is my mic on? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think the practical application of it, as we've discussed, needs to be prioritised. I think in secondary schools and possibly still in universities, it's very exam focused, very theoretical, and I think what we have to do is figure out a way to build actual skills in these young people, because technology, engineering, innovation is very practical, and we've heard about the digital skills gap and how much that's cost in the UK. I think if we can change the system or challenge Department for Education to look at the curriculum and build more practical elements into it and into actually every single subject. Technology is in geography, it's in history, it's in PE. So I think that's something that I'm really passionate about. It isn't just about computer science, it's not just about coding, it's not about your basic IT. Actually, technology is everywhere, it's in every single subject. Make it practical, make it relevant, showcase it in a much more refreshing and inspiring way, and I think that's when we're going to get more students taking it up.
Absolutely. Now, I'd want to come back to, we mentioned AI briefly, Gillian. This is obviously something that's happening right now. I mean, the jumps we've seen between ChatGPT 3 and 4 are just absolutely huge. And when we get to version 5, there's going to, again, sort of, I read a statistic somewhere says it's going to be sort of more intelligent than any typical high school student in the US by that point, and that's going to just keep on going. It's going to exponentially get more powerful. How does government think about this and react with it? Because we were saying earlier that you've got to change and adapt to a changing scenario, but Whitehall doesn't often work like that. Policy making can be quite slow, and it can be quite difficult when you're dealing with something that's outside of your control as well. So what's your approach to that, and how do we get the right skills on that front?
Well, first of all, there's an attitude. So there's two approaches. One is people who've leaned into it. The other is people who've asked for it to be paused. We've leaned into it. The second is a practical approach. You know, anyone who thinks they know the answer here have really not understood the question. And anyone who thinks governments will be slow, well, everyone's slow. This caught everyone quite by surprise. So the second thing is an acknowledgement of the scale and enormity of what we're trying to do. So we have put money into you know, developing this sort of model frameworks for us. The thing about AI is, however you want to use AI, you have to train AI to be used to be really accurate in whatever it is you're trying to train it to use within your context. And so what we're doing is we're doing lots of different use cases in a sandbox environment. In education, Chelsea mentioned about workload. I mean, we've done quite a lot to reduce the workload of teachers, and we're doing more as well just today. But EdTech is very little used and could be utilised more, and AI could be a game changer. It can literally be trained to mark every exam. Everyone's just done loads of exams all over the country. There's teachers marking them. AI could be doing that, Rita Skeeter fashion in reverse. It could be trained to do that very accurately. It could be trained to help with innovation in practical application of the curriculum, for example. And you know, there's many areas that it can help in just in education, for example, personalised learning journeys. You know, if you need more help in a particular area, it can personalise that. Special educational needs, if you need to get over particular barriers, it can personalise that. There is so much opportunity. We're leaning into it. We're creating the environment, and we're gonna play with it in the sandbox basically and see where we get to.
Well, Onward has recently done a paper, which I'm obliged to promote here, called The Generative AI Revolution, and we categorised AI into opportunities, shocks and threats, and we've talked about the opportunities and the threats, which, I mean, you know, the people who think it's going to exterminate the human race. We can move on from that one quite quickly. But what I would like to ask you about, Charles, is the shocks element, because in that report we cited some research from America that said within the next decade, 19% of jobs will see half of their worth disappear thanks to AI, and that's going to create an even bigger change to the labour market than the Industrial Revolution, which obviously the predecessor firms to BAE played a very, very big role in that. What's your attitude on how you manage that? Because the skills change that is going to be huge, as well as not just new skills we're going to need and then we're training them up, but also there's could be skills that are no longer needed, and that creates potential big issues for businesses like yours.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've got all the answers for one thing. I think it's really approaching this eyes wide open and making sure you understand both the opportunities and the pitfalls. And certainly as a business, you can't turn your back on this. I mean, it's absolutely happening. The rate at which it's happening is getting faster. But it's not, in a sense, a new thing. I mean, there may have been an acceleration because of improving compute power, but I'm frankly, even when I was doing my university education, I mean, neural networks, you know, fuzzy logic, I mean, it's an evolution of things that have been going on a long time. And a business like ours, we've been using you know, elements of artificial intelligence actually for, you know, at least a couple of decades. I mean, within the business and the analytical models that we use. And I think that the speed that things are moving on these large language models is going very fast. And this idea of the hallucinations that, and can you trust the data that comes out of it? And I mean, the comment I often say within the business is, just because it comes out of a computer doesn't make it true. And of course, that's now more true than ever when you look at these large language models and what they're coming out with. But just as you listen to human beings, you apply a filter to that as an individual, as to you assess whether you believe the data. And of course, we've got to change the way we look at this and look at the outputs from these models, because they are becoming more human in their responses. So for me, one of the things that we've got to do is make sure that people are trained and aware about this. So certainly within our business, we're rolling out in pretty short order, a training for every employee so they understand and start to think a bit differently, because there are a lot of pitfalls for a business. I mean, you could upload things into a non-policed sort of large language model and lose complete control of what, in our case, could be classified data, for example. And I mean, that's just a simple example, and it's important that for a business like ours that people understand that. So I think the first instance is eyes wide open, put the training out there, not close yourself off to it, because in areas like coding, for example, I mean, it does offer potentially some transformational changes in efficiency and productivity that we as a business, if we're not leaning into it, we're going to get left behind. So as I said, it's really being open-minded but thoughtful of the pros and cons. And I think your approach of both the threats and the opportunities is something we should all be thinking about.
And I'm sure for both of your realms as well, AI is on the lips of everyone that you're thinking about. From the university's point of view, again, how does this impact how you're teaching and you're thinking about the curriculum, particularly obviously in the science sector that you oversee?
So the idea of sort of pausing or slowing down AI is nuts. It's like trying to say, let's stop the internet. You just can't do it. And all you'd get is sort of the bad actors would just carry on. So I think we all agree you have to embrace it, and you have to change in order to embrace it as well. I think from a university perspective, there are a lot of sort of, from a research perspective and the education, a lot of sort of AI courses, units, etc. Where I think we need to do more is the sort of ethics side, the leadership side, so who are leading these teams. So you'll have the in-depth knowledge, and we'll be able to churn out lots of graduates who have AI knowledge, and that's brilliant, and we definitely need that. But we need to be able to have these people who can lead the teams, who have the in-depth knowledge, who maybe don't have the in-depth knowledge themselves, but who can lead teams, and also who can communicate between different teams as well. So I think that's sort of bringing together. At the minute, it's very much felt like it is a Faculty of Science and Engineering thing, and I don't think it is. It should be across the humanities as well.
I agree, and I think one of the particular areas I believe the UK can play a big international role, as well as its convening power in AI research, is the element of human value to this. The DeepMind has obviously been based in the UK for quite a long time. They've got some fantastic expertise in our higher education sectors, and that's somewhere, because when you say we can't necessarily stop or control where it's going with other countries, but we can play a role in shaping it, and I think that's very important.
Indeed.
So, and again, from your perspective in terms of high schools, what's the conversation about AI and how that's changing education?
Danielle touched on something there about ethics, and this, I was like nodding away because this is the most important area for me. There's two things. One, we've seen technology go bad. We've seen AI go bad, and that's because diverse people behind them and who's creating them, because it is created by people, that it isn't diverse enough. So we need to make sure that diverse people are working on these technologies so that they are better equipped and more inclusive for people. And also in schools, we need to be talking about AI for good and the application or the use of it for good. We've got a Tech for Good course, which is so popular with schools. And we talk about how we use technology for good and then the negative effects. But we want to inspire, like you said, Danielle, leaders to actually embrace it for good. And yes, use it, understand the threats, but there's so many opportunities in like healthcare, in aligned with like the UN Sustainable Development Goals. How can we use AI? How can we use technology for good to do good around the world? And I think that's the most important thing we can do for the next generation, because it's the bad people that is going to make the AI bad, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So make good people and do good stuff with it.
And that really we can all agree with.
Yeah.
Before we come on to class, the last thing I would like to touch on as well is that Onward has done a lot of work on levelling up, and that is something that, going back to 2019 and identifying those regional inequalities being a big part of everything that we do. And I really want to look at how upskilling can help drive that, because obviously we're here, Charles, in your great ass facility in a part of the country that I think has received quite a lot of money from the various levelling up funds here. How do you see the two things knitting together?
I mean, you come to a place like this and you really, in my view, see levelling up in action. I would also suggest that for a company like ours, one of the things I often say to visitors when they come is the sort of the thread of global Britain and exports coming back to a place like this and driving prosperity, long-term, jobs and skills developments in parts of the country like this. I mean, this is real evidence in front of you as how that can work. And I think our increased investments in apprenticeships. I mean, for me, coming into this business I did 7 years ago, and just seeing how it transforms lives, and then the entry points into those apprenticeship programs. We've got Gillian here, who's the CEO of Movement to Work, which is a charity that is very close to my heart because I chair it. But as a way of getting people who've maybe have had a real tough start in life and have maybe fallen off the normal educational routes, and giving them that first opportunity, a placement opportunity in a company such as ours that then enables them to get potentially onto an apprenticeship program, and I see that I see these people then who 10 years on have come into a business such as ours and now have a long-term future to look forward to, or they're maybe buying their first house, and to me it's I mean, you get quite emotional when you see people who've made that journey and the opportunities that you have, and to me that's levelling up, and I'm sure even in this room that you'll find a few people who've been on that journey or who are on that journey.
Should we come in on that, Gillian?
Yeah, I went on that journey. That's why I'm so unbelievably passionate. And when, levelling up, when we say talent is everywhere, opportunity is not, it sounds like a slogan. I couldn't agree with it more, because when you've sat in a Knowsley Comprehensive School for the full 5 years and you see all the people still 40 years later, the talent was everywhere because you grew up with the talent, but it hasn't always had the opportunity. In fact, it's really hard to get the opportunity. There's just a few rungs missing on the ladder. So what we've been trying to do is fill in all those rungs. So since 2012 probably more precisely, we have completely revolutionised the apprenticeship system. We've raised the levy. Businesses didn't like it at first, but as I said, it was meant to irritate us into action. I was a business then. I wasn't an MP, so I was on the other side of that argument. But I knew that it was meant to irritate us into action. But we've introduced the levy, we've raised the funds, we've introduced high quality standards in 667 occupations. If you want to be a space engineer to help your space business, you can do it via an apprenticeship. If you want to be a medical doctor from age of 18, you can do it via an apprenticeship. If you want to work as a theatre production director, if you want to work in any role in cyber, digital, we've got 70 into the healthcare. If you want to be, any role you can think of, almost any job you can do now via an apprenticeship. And why is that important? It gets back to whatever opportunity you may have missed out on, you can make up for it there. You can go back. I've met so many brilliant people. I mean, you say it really does change lives. But I met somebody who'd been working in a nightclub toilet, 3 nightclub toilets for 16 years. And I met him when he was on his way to becoming a paramedic, which he'd started in his 30s. He'd started at level 2 because he didn't get his GCSEs. He did level 3, 4, and he was on his way to becoming a paramedic. And he said, his name was Andy, he said, Gillian, it hasn't just changed my lives, it's changed my kids' lives, it's changed everyone's lives. I walk out of my front door with a uniform on. Everybody looks at me like I'm a completely different person. That is what apprenticeships do. He was 36 when he started. So I am so passionate, because a lot of the kids I went to school with and a lot of the people who came after me will have left without the 4 or 5 GCSEs. And it's not because they weren't bright enough. They were. They all were. It's just, education, the culture of education, the people. Life happens, right? Sometimes as well. Sometimes people have really, caring responsibilities. Sometimes they're in care and they need extra help. There's so many things that happen. And what we need to be there is at every step of someone's life, you can get on that ladder. And the lifelong loan entitlement is meant to also completely unleash that if it's not, because obviously an apprenticeship's a job, but you can do it also in other ways as well, and we will make sure that works. Once we have all this in place, this skill system will be absolutely world beating, and I don't say that lightly. It absolutely will be, because there's virtually no apprenticeship systems that are for young people and for any age people that cover that amount of professions with that amount of businesses in that kind of flexible way. What we need are two culture changes: the businesses to really, all over the country, to really do T-level placements, get engaged as well. It takes a bit of effort. And for the universities and the education systems to work with businesses and to be more flexible. They've morphed into full-time education, 4-year or 3 years they've morphed into that. They never used to be that when I was younger. They have morphed into it. They need to go, forward, being much more flexible so that we can really help people everywhere. That will unleash everybody in the country. There's the science superpower.
Exactly. Now, Tess, some of the organisations you've worked with as well, the Liverpool Football Club and the like as well, I'm sure you've come across many parts that are targets of the Levelling Up agenda, and people have applied for funds and such like from there. What's your perspective again on the skills element of that there as well? Because for me, obviously, the two come together. When we improve skills, it helps drive prosperity, it unlocks the opportunity Gillian was talking about, and it can help deliver that goal of, a more prosperous country that is more equal. But I was interested in any on-the-ground thoughts you've had from that.
We've definitely seen it in action. I mean, many of the places in Liverpool and Manchester don't get enough support from businesses, either local or the local government. And we're there really to bridge that gap and introduce them to the likes of BAE. And we took a school in Gorton in Manchester to the BBC a few years ago, and there was about 20 girls that came with us, and they went on workshops, did a tour, met some role models, and one of the girls turned around and said it was the best day of her life, which always gets to me, but it really was. She didn't know that the BBC was 20 minutes on her doorstep. She didn't know what roles were available. She didn't know how to get there. I think half of that cohort changed their GCSE subjects and leaned towards technology from one experience that they had with us. So, it's so important, this kind of stuff. These facilities are amazing. Businesses that actually don't just talk about diversity and inclusion or the next generation and actually invest and challenge us as grassroots organisations on what we're doing and what impact we're having. Like BAE do with us, they're one of our biggest partners, and they don't just talk the talk, they do walk the walk. And it's amazing. We need more businesses like that. There isn't enough of them, and not enough businesses are using their levy, are they? There's so many businesses that we work with that have millions of pounds in levy that they're not getting rid of because they're not thinking about the infrastructure that's needed internally to actually support apprentices. So we need to support these businesses as well. I think, it's down to them, but how can we support them collectively to actually spend that money, because apprenticeships are brilliant.
Can I just introduce a fact there? We're actually spending 99.6% of the levy, so the ones that's unused in businesses is actually transferring over to small businesses, and it's paying for the small. So we're actually using 99.6% now of the levy. Historically, it's not all been used, but it's all being used now.
But a lot of businesses are still telling us that they're not utilising it to give to small businesses.
They might not be using it for their own business, but it's transferring to another business
by
locally.
government, is it?
Yeah. But and the mayors as well.
It was funny, Dan, before we open out to questions now, again, this point about skills and levelling up, universities play a big role in this as well, and I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that universities should be part of the sort of region's ecosystem, and Manchester, we obviously very much are. There are 3 universities. We have the likes of BAE Systems and GCHQ and other things around the region. And massive opportunities. There's Innovation District Manchester, which is going to bring loads of different things to the region. So it's making sure that that we work together, you know, across the higher education sector, so across the 3 universities, and make sure that we are part of that whole region ecosystem, and not just, in our case, the sort of city region. There are the boroughs of Manchester, and if you go out into the boroughs, they're very different in terms of the skills that they have. So we need to make sure we're addressing the needs of the whole of the region. And so universities being part of that ecosystem, I think, is really important.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. We're going to open out to questions, and I'm going to take a couple that have come in from people who are watching us on the live stream. Please do send them in, and the Onward team will pass them to me on stage, and we'll take questions in the room. Charles, the first one we've got in is for you, and the question is, clearly there's a huge amount of investment underway in defence at the moment, with a significant recruitment drive for the Tempest and Dreadnought. How will defence and security requirements shape the UK technology and skills development over the next decade?
That's a very good question. I mean, as you said, there is an awful lot going in, and one of the things that I'm keen to do is make sure that the broader UK manufacturing sector gets the benefit of some of those investments. So, for example, just up the road here at Wharton, we got the Factory of the Future, which is, we're actually using it now to build some of the first and early parts of the Tempest platform, and as a way of building things, you know, working alongside robots, using a 5G network in a very secure and cyber-secure way, the kind of technologies that the teams are developing, I think, have a much broader application. And I think one of the things, certainly when I speak into government, is, you know, how can we do a better job of making sure that that defence spending, you know, we know when, you know, government budgets are always tight. How do we make sure that something that's spent in defence gets used multiple times elsewhere in the business, which does mean opening up some of the things that we do, so that the broader manufacturing ecosystem across the north of England or across the whole of the UK can benefit from those investments. And for that, I think we do have more work to be done. A lot of it is around just making sure people understand what we do, bringing small businesses through, and the work that we're doing there. But it is an area that we're pushing quite hard now.
Okay. Now, the next question is on STEM teachers. So this comes in, I think this one's for you, Gillian, saying that the quality of STEM teachers are critical to the supply of STEM talent, yet there are severe shortages. What more must be done to boost the number of STEM teachers?
Yeah, and this is an issue. We've actually struggled to recruit I mean, everyone struggled to recruit right now, right, post-pandemic, but in certain subjects for teaching, we've struggled for a couple of years. Maths, physics, computer science, and modern foreign languages actually are the ones that consistently. So we've had a real look at that to see what we can do. So we've introduced bursaries and scholarships into those, so £27,000, £29,000 bursaries and scholarships. We're also applying additional payments, so levelling up payments in certain parts of the country. But I want to go further, of course, because it's me. The answer to every question is an apprenticeship, and so I've now got them working on a maths and physics and other science degree apprenticeship, so that we can either attract young people who want to skip the student debt and go into teaching, and they can do it by an apprenticeship. So we're working on that at the moment. And then also anybody who wants perhaps to go into teaching as a second career, but of course everybody still needs to earn money because they need to pay their bills. So it provides a glide path for anyone wanting teaching as a second career. So that's something that we're working on right now as well. We recruit from abroad. Obviously, we offer the we have international students coming here. The international student strategy is part of getting the brightest and the best. Our universities are one of the most envied and admired in the world, the sector, making sure that's there, making sure that we partner with everybody to get the brightest and the best, and then try and get some of them into teaching. So there's a lot of activity, and it will be a critical success factor. Now, there will be tech that can help with that as well, and there will be ways that we can expand the teaching using the technology itself, but it is going to be a critical success factor.
Yes. Now, this is one's actually, again, for you, but I'm going to throw this to the other panel as well, which is students are not hearing about the range of STEM careers in schools, obviously what you're trying to change. Does the Minister support the call to return for statutory duty on schools to offer work experience, including virtual?
Okay, so I do support. So first of all, when I became an MP, or when I became the Minister for Apprenticeships and Skills, it actually blew my mind that we'd had to legislate so that schools needed to open up so that people could go in and talk about apprenticeships and technical education and all of those things. I couldn't believe that we'd had to legislate to do that. But we did, and then we did again to make that stronger. And basically what we needed to do was to get those things that Chelsea was talking about, you know, those things, not just the group of girls who go to BAE. So you can't be it if you can't see it. But as soon as you see it, you can be anything. It's like walking through a sliding door when you go into a business. I remember when I was 16 and I walked in the factory, it blows your mind, it blows your senses. It's like walking through a sliding door. You need lots of people walking through those sliding doors. BAE Systems let lots of people do that. So it's really, really important. Virtual, completely a fan of. I went to so many virtual careers fairs during COVID. They were amazing, but they don't replicate the real thing quite as much. And you can't talk to people quite as easily and just say, you know, how did you get here? So I think virtual as a supplement, not as a replacement. And lots of people have been trying to put virtual, you know, work placements and things like that in. If you talk to a young person, particularly a T-level student, say, how do you fancy doing a virtual work placement? Their face drops. They're like, you're kidding. I spend most of my time in my bedroom on my PC, and now you want me to do that for my work experience? I bought a suit. You know, they want to go in. They want to go through the sliding door, and we must enable them to go through the sliding door. And that is about business and education working together. As you can tell, I'm reasonably passionate about that.
Definitely. Would either of you like to come in on the work experience question, how important it is?
Me.
If you'd like to.
Yeah, I think going back to virtual in general, so it's brought a lot of opportunities, but I think definitely a hybrid model definitely works. So pre-pandemic, Innovate Here delivered all of our activities face-to-face in schools, but obviously the pandemic ruined that for us. And we quickly built an e-learning platform. There was only 4 of us in our team, and we did that ourselves. And the amazing thing that we've seen is the way that teachers have embraced it. And we're in about phase 4 or 5 of that e-learning platform now, and we're building a cybersecurity course with BAE on it, and teachers have been able to use it much more flexibly than, you know, bringing us into the classroom, which is great for them because they've got not so much time to do that. But we do recognise the importance of going in and having face-to-face time, so we kind of split it, but the teachers and students have definitely embraced the online environment, but it's such a challenge. You've got to make it super interactive. Our programmes, I must admit, are super interactive. I'm obviously going to say that, but we're innovating it. We're making sure that it's not just your usual e-learning training programme. You've got to think about it differently, and I think it's got a lot of opportunities.
Great. We're going to open this up to the room now, and I'm going to take any questions in a couple of bunches so we can get through as many as possible. We need to make the microphones to get to you before the questions are asked, and we've got people on either side of the room. So we'll take this lady, actually we've got 2 at the front here, so if you just say who you are and where you're from would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Alan Schofield. I'm a local county councillor. I'm very impressed, I'm sure most people in the room, by the passion displayed by all the speakers, not least by Secretary of State Gillian. And 4 words, not just these 4 words, but 4 words are sticking in my mind that came from the Secretary of State when she said, all over the country. Because what we're really talking about, as good, as important it is about advanced manufacturing and engineering, of which of course BAE Systems is a great star, we need to get the same message actively practiced across the whole UK economy, because clearly it's all important to achieve the UK's economic growth aspirations. And clearly upskilling, better understanding where education comes in at all levels, and innovation are very important in all businesses. And it's reassuring to hear from the speakers, and particularly, might I say, Secretary of State Gillian, about examples that she has done personally and her department, and she's given a few examples of what's going to happen. I wonder if she could give some assurance by some more examples that may be planned in the future by her department to carry on this good work, because we need these percentages of positive achievements getting higher, don't we, to achieve the aspirations I've alluded to.
Thank you. And then we'll take the lady at the front here as well to get through as many questions as possible.
Thank you very much for this very informative panel. I'm going to actually continue on what he says about
Very
it
good.
being all through the UK. I'm actually more ambitious all over the world. And I think UK is well known for having in its midst every single nationality, every single ethnic group, every single diverse group, and this is the beauty of the UK. And I know from a BA point of view, you are all across the world. And I know you've literally have 55 years experience in my country, Saudi Arabia. So I really think that we have a large number, like 14,000 students, Saudis studying in all the UK. We look forward to being a very big part of this integration, this transfer of knowledge, this building the force inside UK, inside Saudi Arabia, and maybe across the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, there you are. National and international questions for you to answer.
I
Would you like to hear that, and then we'll get
Yeah, I
views
feel
from
like my
Charles.
life's been leading to this point because I'm from the North. I'm really passionate about the North. I spent most of my time in my 30-year business career in international business, so I'm always thinking internationally. So even just this week, yesterday, I spoke at the Northern Powerhouse Summit, and looking at what more we needed to do. We have got a lot of the institutes of technology are going all around the North. They're doing everything from green energy to life sciences. They're going in the southwest as well. We can't forget some of these other coastal areas. We're looking, obviously, we've got free ports, we've got investment zones, we've got specific government seed fund investment to get some of those going. And we're specifically trying to make sure they are across the country. So that's really, really important. But then internationally, and you're right, and our university system is a big pull factor. So 2 days ago, I was with a whole load of Indian universities. We're going to be going out to India with a trade mission, going to look at how we can partner. The UK, we will convene it, and the UK universities to partner with Indian universities. We'll get a lot of our STEM people from there as well. And Saudi, I think we have campuses in Saudi from some of our universities. That is another part of how we will get our global reach so that we can really attract the world's best talent. And it's very, very strategic, and there's not many who can compete with us. The US does, but that's where China doesn't.
And then just, obviously in the introductory film from BA, a lot was talking about the export that BA does internationally here as well. But so I'd love your thoughts on that element of it, the question.
Well, first of all, there were two very good points, and I completely agree. But I think just to add to that, the element of it, we're not, in this particular regard, we're not just, in a sense, exporting capability. The benefit of being a global company is we can bring those ideas back. And when I sit in the business advisory panel for the Department of Education, and I think one of the things that we do see with our presence in the US and Saudi Arabia or Australia is we can bring these ideas back into the UK ecosystem and make sure that, and I see that as an important role of us as a global company, is to make sure that we are learning from the other countries that are on similar journeys, and make sure that we really do bring those best practices to bear.
Great. Let's get some more questions. Anyone on this side? Oh, plenty. Okay. Let's go for. Let's try and do three. Let's be ambitious. We'll do 1, 2, and 3. If you want to come out with the microphone, Aaron.
Yeah. Good morning. James Hardstaff. I'm the general manager of our BAE Systems Air site in East Yorkshire. It's interesting to get the panel's thoughts on: are we doing enough to influence young people early enough to understand sort of routes into STEM? The reason I say that is we're actually running a pilot project at the moment, jointly with the Leicestershire and the East Yorkshire LEP, around parental engagement. And I think what that's really shown is there's a real lack of understanding within schools, particularly careers leaders and parents as well, which we know are a big influencer of young people. I think if we could do more in that area, then we'd encourage more people into STEM.
Great. Thank you very much. And then the next question on the front here.
Good morning, Jez Holmes from the Royal Air Force, and thank you for the panel so far. A question, if I may, about through career education and upskilling. And it feels like there are some enduring skill sets in technology for BAE Systems, structures, aerodynamics, and there are others that are cross-cutting and new and novel, like data science, you've mentioned that. So in those enduring skill sets, your leaders and mentors, how do we ensure that they are educated in some of these new novel opportunities so that you build that across the demographics?
Thank you. And then just the last question on this side over here.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Ben Andrews, I'm a graduate engineer in Wharton. My question maybe stretches a little bit past where we've discussed so far, but it was, you've been talking about how we've got lots of skills and lots of talent and lots of amazing things going on in the UK and how we're a world leader and the education to kind of maintain that and progress that. My question's about how do we keep that in the UK? Because the global skills market and the global job market is very competitive, and there's lots of the brain drain is the buzzword that comes with that. So how can we make sure that once we upskill people, once people have these skills, how we keep that and how we remain competitive for those people?
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry to throw the first question on this topic again to you, Chelsea, but this question about doing enough in schools that was asked by the gentleman over here.
I think there's so much more that could be done, but we are seeing a lot of hope in terms of businesses investing in digital skills academies. The one thing that teachers do say to us is there's so many digital skills academies, where do we look? So we've taken the approach at Innovate here, and I know Create Education, who are in the room, have taken a similar approach around creating really good relationships with teachers and taking them on a journey through like longer term relationships and partnerships. So we've just announced a 4-year relationship with BAE and 10 Lancashire schools. And obviously that just scratches the surface. So much more needs to be done, but that's a £500,000 investment. 8,000 students are going to go through our programme. So yeah, it's not a direct answer, but I think there's so much more to be done. Maybe Gillian can talk about some of the opportunities that government gives to schools, but I think from a grassroots kind of social enterprise point of view, it is quite difficult to get into them because there's so many available, and then also there's just not enough investment for us to make the impact that we really want to.
And Daniel, you wanted to come in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, it's take the STEM, take the engineering to people as well, to the young people, and take it into the things that they're just dead interested in already, you know, like if it's gaming, if it's fashion, if it, you know, whatever it is, there is engineering, there is technology involved in that. This goes back to what you were saying earlier, Gillian. So take it to them rather than sort of saying, oh, well, let's talk about engineering. Let's just talk about the stuff that they love already, and then be like, oh, by the way, do you know how much engineering technology is in there? And I think your point is really good on sort of inspiring the people who inspire the young children. So if you talk to one teacher who teaches 30 kids and you inspire that teacher to then inspire the 30 kids, you know, the pipeline is much, or the tree sort of gets a lot bigger. So I think working with parents, working with the educators is really important as well, not just sort of directly with the young children. And building the confidence, particularly of parents, but I think this is probably true of teachers as well. We were talking about this earlier, weren't we? The sort of confidence side, just to try things out. You know, like as a parent, loads of people are happy to, you know, spend a Saturday afternoon baking a cake or something. And if it's a bit rubbish and it's a bit burnt, and, you know, it's fine. You've had a really good time, and your children's probably learnt something. And we'll try that with some pieces of electronics. You know, the parents are like, no, you know, I don't know how to do that. Well, you didn't know how to make a cake either, but you were fine trying that. So I think it's just the confidence side and working with parents and educators, people who inspire those children is really important.
And also, sorry, just to add to that, it needs to be so consistent, because as we know, technology changes so fast. AI is changing faster than ever. So it needs to be consistent, this approach, because soon it will become outdated.
Yes.
So it needs to be long term.
Indeed. Gillian, do you want to come in the point the gentleman asked about the lifelong element,
Yep.
which is very much up your bailiwick?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to assure everyone that careers, we all really care about it. Every MP is, I mean, we've got 3 of my fellow MPs there. They're on my desk all the time. You know, make sure we get careers, make sure we get the businesses in schools. We're now introduce careers from primary 8 to 13. And the reason we didn't do it in the same way everybody wanted before is quite often what you find sometimes is you say do careers and they end up basically doing rubbish stuff instead of really high quality engagements. So you've got to make sure it's a high quality engagement, not just the word, and that's what we've been all working. In terms of the sort of lifelong, this is a culture change that we are absolutely going to do. I mean, if this is part of the student loan, I mean, Danielle mentioned the LLE, lifelong loan entitlement, what we're doing is we're taking the student loan and we're saying to everybody, this is not a shot that comes around when you're 18 or 19. You go and sit somewhere and do a course for 3 years or 4 years now because you think you need to do a master's to differentiate because everyone else is doing a degree. This is something that we now need to really change the system. Well, I put all the apprenticeships on UCAS. Here's what I hope happens. Somebody sat there, they're exploring, they're looking at things. That sounds interesting, cybersecurity or you know, fashion, whatever it is. I fancy doing that. Oh, I can do a level 4-5 apprenticeship. Someone will employ me, someone will train me, someone will pay me. I can still keep my loan. Later on, I'll go and do a master's because actually I fancy the full-time experience, but I now know exactly how I want to direct it. I've got my loan and I've got my loan entitlement. Later on, I might want to do a shorter course, which is something that's certified, that's got huge advantage to I'm going to get the next promotion or I'm going to really add value to my business. That is the vision, and that is what we'll have all the pieces in place for. And also industry exchange between industry and teaching. If I can get, I've got it in terms of the pieces, but it's not firing on all cylinders. That's something that I think lots of people would love to be able to do, the sort of dual approach of working in industry and also imparting their knowledge to the next generation. And it's a very purposeful thing to do, and we need to make sure that that's working. And then Ben, to avoid the brain drain, I guess the first thing is I think we can be kind of a lead pull for attracting the brains. The UK is a hugely attractive place for people to want to come and people to want to live for many, many reasons, but mostly because, you know, we're a nice country, right? People want to live here, and there's lots of opportunity, and we care, and we innovate, and we evolve. So we've got a pull factor. Our universities bring that, and so people start to see and understand us. 55 of the world's leaders today around the world were educated in the UK. There's only one country that beats us, the US, 67. You know, we've got this, right? So we need to basically continue to do that. But then when they're here, clearly the businesses being here, offering those fantastic jobs and being able to get on. I think entrepreneurial opportunities as well, a lot of the efforts we make to make sure that there's startup loans, there's the right environment to enable people to also start their own businesses and innovate, you know, like DeepMind and others. That is also something that we put a lot of attention to. And even looking at films, you know, we have specific tax systems, so because we want to make the films here, you know, we want to continue to be a leader in film and creative, because the spillover into other areas as well, defence into that, and it's all going to start to be a much more organic system, and it's not really consistent, it's organic. It needs to move organically, which is why I love the way, I mean, Charles is on the advisory panels, all the businesses are working with the apprenticeship standards. If you're working in that way, you can't really get out of step. You might be a little bit behind, but you've got the system which allows you to continually be organic.
Thank you. Now, I just want to do one quick last round of questions before we go to this side of the room, so I can see there's 2 ladies at the back, and we'll try and get this one in as well, please. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Ange Davis, also work closely with Dan at the University of Manchester. So absolutely agree, Gillian, that I think apprenticeships is completely something. It's something that we're working hard at Manchester to try and turn things around there in terms of our sort of flexible learning programme that Dan's mentioned. Just wanted to touch back on the lifelong loan entitlement. And, you know, if you think about actually a lot of where we might go in terms of lifelong learning, a lot of it's in continuing professional education, continuing professional development, and that aligns quite closely with some of our postgraduate programs, which obviously do sit at the level 7 end of things. Do you think there's much, you know, in terms of opportunity there, in terms of consideration of moving the loan in that direction as well? I guess at the moment it's sort of more focused at the undergraduate. I just think we need more flexibility.
Thank you. And then the next lady at the back here.
Sorry, I'm going to stand up because I'm short. So my name's Anya Devine. I am a third-year EDAS degree apprentice working at BAE. So I came straight out of school, straight out of sixth form into this apprenticeship. And during my time at sixth form, it was very much all the focus was on your personal statement. All of it was on getting you into university. There was almost like a quota and an expectation that you had to go. And when I said, look, I want to do an apprenticeship because I don't think it's for me, they said, well, do a personal statement anyway, just in case you change your mind. So how do we tackle kind of this stigma towards just going to university, the normal pipeline, as we say.
Thank you very much. And then we've got one final question, which is, can we oh, there we are. Just make sure we get the steps in. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Julie Mennell. I'm Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cumbria. Just to say, University of Cumbria, 46% of our students are upskilling and reskilling in the workplace through employer collaborations, including BAE. We've got 1,800 degree apprentices. We've got 1,000 paramedic students across the UK, 500 teachers. So we're doing many of the things, and for the reasons that you've said, for our region. But if I put my other hat on, I'm co-chair of the Cumbria LEPS, People, Employment and Skills Strategy Group. I have my fellow co-chair here, Janet, who is Director of Workforce at BAE. I'm sitting next to the Chief Executive of Westmoreland and Finesse. And the question I've got is, how do we ensure that if we're really going to harness our potential in terms of skilling, upskilling and reskilling, that we take a systems level, place-based approach to it? Because it's not just about, importantly, higher skills, it's also about labour supply, talent pipelines and so on. And what we're doing in Cumbria, I think, is a fantastic example. I know we're in Lancashire, so apologies, colleagues. is a fantastic example of what can be done. And what are the incentives to do that even more? Thank you.
Thank you. We are almost out of time, so I'm going to very quickly just ask Gillian to quickly rattle through those three things, if you could, before we come to the end.
Level 7, yeah, we have lots of apprenticeships at level 7. Loan, I'm always open to looking what works, but I'll only look at what works, what's quality, what the businesses want, so work with the businesses. School culture, absolutely right. It's something I've got to change. 2 things I'm doing. UCAS, as I mentioned, to get the pull-through, to get the questions when you're looking at UCAS, and the apprenticeship. Anyone who's done an apprenticeship, I mean, I did mine 35 years ago. You still see the passion about how it changed everything about my life. Anyone who's done an apprenticeship, a high-quality apprenticeship, will be that person. And once I've got lots of people who are teachers, then they will change their mind as well. The University of Cumbria are doing a fantastic job, so thank you for all you're doing. One of the big things which I have waiting for me when I get back is the local skills improvement plans. This is the systematic way that we are going to have to do those. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not expecting them all to be fantastic from the beginning, mostly because I have super high expectations, but that is the structure, that is the way, and we're investing in those so that we make sure that we can create that convening role so that you, and we'll also put the investment into the provision that is required as a result of working with businesses to make sure that we are training up everybody within a place-based scenario as well. So I'm very excited about those, and we also have a future work unit that we've set up to do the sort of higher level where we're going to be in 5, 10, 15 years, so we can get that brought into those as well. So yeah, we're on it, but that's at the very beginning of that journey, and it will make a massive difference as long as we make sure it does. It's the quality of the input.
Thank you. And I'm so sorry to have to draw this to a conclusion. We've run out of time here, and I know we could keep continuing the conversation, and thankfully it can, because we'll be serving lunch outside where we can continue this. But for now, I want to thank very much Charles, Gillian, Chelsea and Danielle for joining us, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming, your excellent questions.